Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about how to frame ethical issues. Now, this is something that comes up in many different programs because, of course, good ethical practices are needed everywhere, but we're going to be looking at a specific assignment and how it presents the task of writing about ethical issues, following ethical guidelines, and using this in the context of analyzing case studies. So we're going to be looking at an assignment in the higher education program, but if you're in any other program where you're writing about ethical issues, hang in there because I think you'll find a lot of useful things here. If you're new to the Online Writing Center, we work with students throughout the ACU Dallas, the ACU online programs. We offer webinars such as this, resources such as templates, sometimes sample papers. We offer consultations where you can schedule an appointment and either for an asynchronous appointment, schedule time, upload a draft of your paper with any special requests, and we'll send you feedback via email within 24 hours. Or you can schedule a real-time appointment, which will take place either by phone or Zoom, where you can ask your questions and get feedback in real time. Now, which works best for you is kind of a subjective question of what you want or what you want right now. And we have students who select different ones depending on their schedule or what sorts of questions they have, what sorts of feedback they're interested in. So one of the advantages of the asynchronous appointments is that provided you get your draft into us on time, by the time your appointment's supposed to start, you could work right up to that point and then go off to work or go sleep or take the kids out. And so you don't have to be present there, and we'll look at it and we'll give you feedback in different forms. But if you are someone who really likes having that conversation where you feel that you can think about the material more clearly when you are talking with someone about it, then you might want to schedule a phone or Zoom appointment. Now, the question for phone versus Zoom, it's really a question of, do you have specific questions about the writing or about the formatting? In which case it might be very helpful to see things. Or do you focus better, perhaps if you're trying to understand an assignment, do you focus better if you are hearing without the visual distraction? And if that's the case, a phone call is perfectly okay. Or you might be on the move and you can't be in front of a computer screen, but you are in the passenger seat of a car. Please do not have an appointment while you are driving. I do not recommend that at all. But if you're in the passenger seat and you can dial in to ask some questions about understanding the assignment or about reviewing something relatively concise like a problem statement, that's certainly fine. So your call, which one you prefer. You have both options available, asynchronous appointments or real-time appointments. Now the process, you will go to my.acu.edu and then you can select from the list of resources the Online Writing Center. And that'll take you to a page with a link off to our scheduling system. That's WC Online. You schedule time in WC Online, and you'll see a link there to upload a paper for the given week. And once you've uploaded that paper, your appointment time comes around. We'll look at it and send you feedback, generally in under 24 hours. Often much faster, but if it's, say, major holiday weekend, Easter weekend, it might take us slightly longer than normal. All right, so something else. We have many webinars, and the number of webinars is growing every term. So I want to call your attention on the Writing Webinars page. At the top, you'll see a calendar list of all the new things being offered this term. But if you scroll down, you'll see this tabbed guide here. And if you click on the program name, in this case, HIED for the Higher Education Graduate Program, you will see a list of all the courses that we currently have available videos for you to watch with tie-ins to specific assignments. So you can see that there's one for assignment in Higher Education 611. When we're done with this webinar, there'll be another entry here for new course and the assignment, and we expand this, we add to it throughout the term as the webinars recordings become available. Now you can always see the calendar list at the top. At the very bottom there's a big alphabetical list, but if you want to go see, is there something for my very specific assignment, this is where you want to go, to the tabbed guide. Some things that you'll see me showing and referencing later. We have an APA course paper template, which I'll be using, and we strongly suggest that you use for formatting your paper. Videos, if you want to watch them on the go, we have a YouTube channel. Now, the most current up-to-date list is always on the Writing Center webinars page, but if you go to the YouTube channel, it just lags a little bit with the video uploads. We also have a blog where we explore different writing topics. So, one more thing. I want to call your attention that we do have a graduate writing tab. So if you get feedback in your course saying, it'd be good if you work on your writing, understanding that graduate and undergraduate students have different demands or different levels of expectations. If you go to the Graduate General Writing tab, you'll find a number of resources intended for students such as yourself. Okay, our main learning objectives today. First, we're going to work on understanding the principles of case study analysis. Then we're going to specifically look at Higher Education 613, HIED 613's Assignment 2. This is a Week 2 assignment, so if you're watching this during Week 1, great, you're looking ahead. So this is Assignment 2, the Ethical Case Studies assignment. We're also going to specifically look at how to cite some of the key sources used in this assignment. And we're going to finish with a discussion of outlining and drafting. So let's talk about those principles of case study analysis. Now, this is something where there are many different assignments that involve case studies. Some cases you're authoring an original case study. In some cases, you're analyzing a specific one. Sometimes you're assessing a constructed case study or talking about how you would delineate one. And so we have a couple webinars that explore that specific topic. This is expanding all the time, so if you're watching this on video replay, go to the Writing Webinars page and just search for case study or case studies, and you'll see that a lot of choices. All right, so what are case studies? Well, a case study is something that's bounded. That's how we get the case. If you think of something that would fit inside a case, there are strict boundaries. And by focusing on what's within that case, whether those boundaries are time, geography, incident, or something else, we're able to explore things in better detail. And they're used for a lot of things, for memory retention to understand concepts, to explore how you would apply things in a professional setting, to compare what you would suggest with what actually happened, and other things like that. So case studies get used a lot to generate ideas for, well, what happens if we combine this, or what happens if we apply this thing. And you use this to build a greater understanding of the subject, whatever it is, to focus or to get a clearer understanding of specific details that are being compared or contrasted. It's a way of diluting potential bias. By abstracting some of the details, we're better able to focus on the particulars. Classic example, any visual characteristic that might possibly influence someone's perception of another person or events. Let's take a positive example. My family is rooted in Hawaii. Someone comes in, they have a Hawaiian Islander accent. I'm like, oh, I like you more immediately, which is not a bad thing normally. But if it's something where I'm supposed to be unbiased, if I'm judging people at a competition, their accent is not really relevant and should not be being brought into it. So by taking that detail away from consideration, by writing up a case study and only putting in the pertinent details for consideration, you're able to reduce the potential for bias. Now, we usually don't intentionally add bias, but even so, by diluting the potential, by reducing the potential, we are able to be more objective and sometimes understand how to resolve complex situations easier. And one of the most important things that occurs in so many assignments is to illustrate theories or guidelines by applying them to real-world type situations. And I think you'll agree when we see the case studies for this week's assignment that these are very real things that can come up and that are perhaps more on our awareness than before, more on our radar than before. So you can use these case studies to understand those things. But when you're analyzing it, when you're writing about it, well, often role-playing the decision process, identifying what is going on here, and seeing how to understand or explain what's going on, and hopefully the solution, in a natural or real-world setting. In this particular assignment, we're not so much generating generalizable conclusions, things to apply to the big picture world. It's more focused on, okay, understand these things in the scope of the assignment. And that's fine. We'll get to that kind of case study later. So, because of these things, I recommend before you start writing to ask, well, how am I using this case study? What is the purpose of my writing about it? And what do you need to tell the reader about why you're using it? And what is the lens or point of view or purpose going on? Now, in these case studies, there is a definite common theme of problems in need of resolution, things that will get worse if not attended for. And that might be one way to look at it. But you can also look at it if you're entering a profession, say student advising, student services, say, okay, well, what do the guidelines for my profession say should be done here? Now, when you are writing about case studies in your paper, question often comes up, and oh, by the way, you can send us quick questions via email. I answer these all the time. If you are writing about a case study, how do you cite it? How do you refer to it in your paper? And we start with a basic question. Is it published? Now, let's expand on what that means. So is it something that can be retrieved by someone else without their say being enrolled in a course? Is it something where you could just pay money and get access to the database, or find it directly in the library shelf, or through a subscription database? Has it been made available to the public? Then yes, you're going to cite and reference it as whatever source type it is. Could be a case study in a book, so cite it as a book. Could be a case study in an article, so cite it as an article. It could be a standalone web page, cite it as a web page. If it's not published, if it's not accessible to the public, and we will say that something that exists only on your course website does not count as accessible to the public, then you can refer to it in text, but you would not include a parenthetical citation, and you would not include an entry in the references list. And that's it. Is it published as defined by the American Psychological Association? If it is, cite and reference it. If not, just refer to it in text. Now, in this particular assignment, this will come up in things like, oh, in the college admissions scholarship case study. Okay, so it's a descriptive of a phrase so that we can identify which one you're talking about. But they also happen to be numbered. So you can refer to them as case study number 1, case study number 2, etc. All right, let's take a look specifically at this assignment. And again, this is for Higher Education 613's Week 2, Assignment 2. So this is the assignment that you'll be doing next week after this video publishes, the Ethical Case Studies assignment. Now, the description I've broken down into several things, because you'll often find that the assignments have things that are instructions telling you exactly to do this, and some that are more setting the mood or setting the stage or reminding you of what to do before, or they're telling you the purpose of the assignment. So we've separated out here some of the instructions as a preamble. In this assignment, you are to develop responses to prompts about the four case studies. You will submit an individual response paper that addresses each of the 4 cases. Okay, so that's kind of big picture thing. We continue after that, and we have the instruction to read the ACPA standards, and that you'll be referring them. You should be referring to those in your paper. And then you're tasked with specifically, okay, read the case studies and think about the ethical issue, or issues, plural, that are present in each. And then you're going to write a response paper where you answer some questions for all 4 case studies. What is the ethical issue? What ACPA standard or principle applies here? Specifically numbering it. And without any intervention or action, what long-term problems may develop? And, as a result, what intervention or interventions, plural, do you recommend? Now, we have those 4 case studies, and then we have these questions to answer for each of them. And the instruction here says it should be 150 to 200 words for each case, which is going to be around 2.5 to 3.5 pages total, plus a little bit of introduction, a little bit of conclusion. So we're looking somewhere around 3 to 4 pages-ish. And we have an instruction here to put your name and word count in the upper left corner of the paper, and to put these headings, case study number 1, case study number 2, at the top of each set of responses. Now let's back up and talk about that first bullet. So this is what's called a house rule. Having your name and the word count in the upper left-hand corner, that's not something that is specified in the APA assignment or publication guidelines. That is what we call a house rule. So you're in my house, you follow my rules, you visit grandma's house, you act to grandma the way that you have been advised or requested or required to. So in this case, we just need to keep in mind that will be an addition to the paper template, not something that's there by default. And then, of course, format and cite things using APA style. All right, now that second bullet about adding case study number 1, number 2, that's a specific instruction saying to add an APA heading there. And because this will be the first set of headings in the document, it should be APA level 1. If we look at the rubric here, we see, okay, 20% of the points are going to, is this well written? And does it make sense? Is it clear? So basically, quality of writing and communication. We have 40% going to, have you done everything that has been asked? As in terms of content, answering each question for each case study. And then the other 40% is going to, do you demonstrate in-depth understanding and use, correct implementations of the things that are being discussed? So if your response is too short or not clear enough or too vague, then you might lose some points there. So we'll talk a little bit about how you can make that more clear when we get to it. All right, now this particular assignment has 2 main sources that you'll be referring to. Besides the case study, which again, the case study is not being published, do not get cited or referenced in a formal sense. But as far as the main sources that you're going to be using for this, the course text and those standards we talked about earlier, well, you're going to be creating a reference entry that follows the basic principles used in all APA reference entries, namely, who wrote it, when was it published, what's it called, and how do you find it. Now, the exact details of what that looks like will depend based on the source. But for a journal article, it would look like this. Who wrote it? Valencia, MJ. MJ Valencia. When was it published? 2007. What's it called? The East China Sea Dispute, Context, Claims, Issues, and Possible Solutions. How do you find it? Oh, you go to the journal Asian Perspective, Volume 31, Issue 1, and you look in pages 127 to 167. Now, if we're looking at, say, a YouTube video, it's the same basic formula. Who wrote it? When was it published? What's it called? And how do you find it? Now, in this case, who wrote it, you put in the channel name as it is. You don't abbreviate the first name. If there's a first name, just do it as is. So the channel name is called Jeremy Johns. So we have Jeremy Johns there, not Johns, comma J, period. No, just the channel name as is. Now, YouTube happens to point out the publication year, publication month, and publication day. So we include all three here. 2021, August 21st. The title, what's it called, is Reminiscence Movie Review. And then for videos, we include in square brackets the text video, identifying it. Oh, yeah, it's a video on YouTube. And then we have YouTube, the platform, and then a direct link to it. Now, if you don't own a copy of the APA publication manual, you might want to grab this reference guide, which is a handy PDF that explains the different ways that information is combined to form a citation and has examples of some of the most common types. All right, so for our sources, the first one referenced here is the American College Personnel Association standards, the ACPA standards. Now, often these standards you'll find published in a variety of forms, and the important thing is that it accurately reflect what you actually used. So if it's the exact same PDF on multiple websites, well, given the choice, we take the official website, but if it's the exact same PDF, then either of those will work in a pinch. Now, looking at this, we have some information that's ACPA Statement of Ethical Principles and Standards, and we have a link to the document in the course website. But remember, things on the course website are not accessible to the general public. They're not considered published in the same sense as, say, that journal article or that YouTube video. So we're going to need to find where those standards are. And since it's for a professional organization, a professional association, they should be available to the public. So now, how would you classify this for finding the exact guidelines to use? Well, this is published by a professional organization, but it's not like a peer-reviewed article, and it's not an official report. It's what we call gray literature. It doesn't fit into the extremes, and those are outlined. The relevant instructions here are APA pages 329 to 331, especially bottom page 330, top of 331. That is example number 55, which is talking about exactly this kind of thing. Now, if you're not sure, or if you feel that the kind of source that you are looking at doesn't fit into one of the main categories you're aware of, you can always send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. Get emails asking about citations just about every week. Not a problem. Now, if you look at the PDF, we have some information that I've highlighted here that will be helpful for tracking this down. First, the title of the document, Statement of Ethical Principles and Standards, including using the ampersand. Okay, that's the title of the document. And we also have the institutional website, myacpa.org. So if we're going to be looking for a copy of this, we might as well start with the official website. That's going to be a very likely place to find this. Now, if I take the title, Statement of Ethical Principles and Standards, and punch that into Google, in quotation marks, with ACPA, the very first thing that comes up actually is that document. And so here we have the information that we'd use. So ACPA, College Student Educators International. Now if we look at this, that's the logo in the upper left-hand corner. If we look at the bottom of this, we see that the title is written out. Same thing if we look at the bottom of the website, they have that written out. So the official name is ACPA College Student Educators International. That's what they put on as the corporate author, so we use the organization as the corporate author here. Now, if we were to look at that PDF, it actually doesn't have any dates on it. And so this leads people to one common mistake. They'll look at this link and they'll say, oh, that was uploaded in 2020. Must have been published in 2020. Well, the problem is there's no way for us to know when it was first published, because they could have reorganized their website and happened to upload it back on 2020. So if there's no date on the document itself, no way for knowing this was when it was published, then we use N period D period, which stands for the Latin phrase non datum, which basically means no date on it. So N period D period. Now we'll use that in place of the publication year that we don't know whenever you're citing this. All right. Now, a few other things. So the title of the organization, that's a proper noun. So that's capitalized in title case. End period, D period, okay, that's the date. We talked about that. Don't forget the period is at the end. The title, Statement of Ethical Principles and Standards, that's answering the what's it called. And because the organization that is the author is also the organization whose website this is on, we don't repeat the name. That would be redundant. We just have the link to the file. Now, if you're citing it, first you're going to write out that whole name for in place of the date, end period, D period. And I have here the two common examples here. If you're using a signal phrase, you're referring to the organization in the body of the sentence. And then we have the date to key it to the reference list. Or if you're just doing a parenthetical citation, that's the one at the bottom. Now that is a fairly long name. And whenever you have a fairly long name like that, it's often a good idea to use an abbreviation or acronym so that you don't have to use that whole long thing all the time. Now, in this case, for an abbreviation that's not listed in the APA manual, then you should be introducing that acronym. For example, according to the American College Personnel Association standards, parentheses ACPCA's, College Student Educators International, and then in square brackets, you're introducing the abbreviation that you use. In this case, I picked ACPA-CSEI. Very simple, one letter for each word. And then end period, D period, because there's no publication year for this. Now, once you've introduced that, I can just use the ACPA-CSEI to refer to that author, whether it's in the body of the sentence or whether it's in a parenthetical citation. So for example, because this assignment requires that you reference particular standards, you could have something like the second example. Standard 1.2 emphasizes the importance of contributing back to the profession. Parentheses, ACPA, CSEI, end period, D period. How do you know that Standard 1.2 says that? Oh, there's the citation to go find it in the reference and go see what Standard 1.2 says. Now, if you're doing a quote, that's fine. You'll have a parenthetical citation after the quote, which again, we have the abbreviation ACPA, CSEI, comma, end period, D period, comma, P period, in this case, page 2. The other source that you will be using for this assignment that is referenced in this is the Student Services, A Handbook for the Profession textbook. So this is Shu, Jones, and Torres. And we have a couple pieces of information here that are helpful for finding exactly what you're looking for. The ISBN number lets you find and purchase an exact version of the book. There's also a link to the ACU library. But what do we need here? What we need in our citation and our reference? Well, the reference is going to be basically the information here minus the ISBN minus the available through the ACU library link. Because that ACU library link isn't going to be super helpful to anyone outside of ACU. And if you're citing it, we abbreviate any source with 3 or more authors. We immediately abbreviate it to first author et al. So Shu et al. 2017 in these two different forms here. All right, so let's move on to outlining and drafting. And this is the point where if you don't have a copy of the AP course paper template, I strongly recommend that you download one now. Now, I have here a copy of the APA course paper template, and of course you'll want to fill in information like this. But let's go back and take a look at the instructions for this assignment. Because if we turn back to those instructions, there's something very important we want to add. So remember that first bullet here, to put your name and word count in the upper left-hand corner of the page. So, all right. If I go up here and click in what's called the header here, I can add my name. And let's see, it says my name, so it doesn't specify first or last. And I'm going to also add the word count. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've seen a student draft where it comes and they've filled this in, but they forgot to put in the actual number here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to add a comment. So I could go to Insert, and then normally you can add one. This is in the heading, so you can't. So I'm going to go out of the header. That's right. Because it's in the header, I can't just add a comment, but I can anywhere outside. So here, go to Insert, and you see comment is no longer grayed out. And I can add this note here saying, okay, so I've got that note there to myself. And so this greatly improves the likelihood that I will actually remember to add that. Now, I have faith in myself, but I also know that I'm human, and so might be rushing to get something in. And so by adding this reminder to myself, this very visible comment here, I've got the reminder that I should take care of that before I do it. All right, so you can go ahead and add your information. Of course, okay, well, if we're looking back at this, we are looking at HIED 630, and you can fill in the instructor and date stuff. Oh, a handy thing, if you're not familiar with it, there is actually a insert date function in Word. So we go to the menu in the upper left-hand corner, select Insert, and we have Date and Time. So you can select the day in whatever format. We'll use this one here, month, day, year. And I'm going to say Update Automatically. So whenever I save this, it will put in the current date. I just need to center that. You can add your instructor's name there. We're going to go ahead and add the course paper title here. Now, this is the Ethical Case Studies assignment. And you can just have the name of the assignment here. It's descriptive, which is good. It is accurate, is good. It's also very concise. It is not poetic, but in APA style, you shouldn't be writing poetic things anyway, because they're less precise, they're less specific, they're less unambiguous. So having a title like that is perfectly fine. And it's not a problem in APA style. All right, I'm going to take out these placeholders here, and take out these placeholder references. And let's look at what the instructions tell us to have in this paper. So the instructions say that you should develop responses to the prompts about the 4 case studies. Okay. And, okay, referring to that source we were looking at earlier. And here we are. Okay, here's the specific instructions. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy and paste these into the Word document. So here we have the instructions. And I paste them in, and immediately I see some things that I can start deleting here. Step 1, hey, I got that. I read that, and I know I'm supposed to be considering the ethical issues, and it's even broken down there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just put black highlighter on that. Next, I see, okay, I'm supposed to be adding a prompt for each case study. All right. So I know I need to answer this for each of the 4. So I'm going to go ahead and add here case study number 1, case study number 2, 3, number 4. And I have to answer these questions for each one, so I'm going to go ahead and paste them after each one. Now, don't worry if the formatting is a little bit off right now, because the next thing is going to be taking care of that other instruction about the headings. That's the second bullet here. To put case study number 1, number 2, etc. at the top of each response within the body of the paper. So again, that's saying to use an APA Level 1 heading. Alright, so here we're going to use the Styles menu. You can see some of the styles here, but let's look at it more fully. So if I use the Styles pane button here, so I'm in the Home part of the ribbon, Home, Styles pane, and I select some text, case study number 1. And I select AP Level 1. Look what happens to that text. It loses the bullet, it gets bolded, it gets centered. That's now formatted as an AP Level 1 heading. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the other headings, because I do not want to lose any points. Now, if you select the wrong one, you'll have some visual cues. First of all, this is aligned left instead of centered, and so you can see that doesn't match. Also, it says here under Current Style, and over here, AP Level 2. So I just click on the right one, AP Level 1, boom, centered, bolded, great. Go ahead and do that here for case study number 3 and case study number 4. All right, so within this, you know that this is going to follow up a kind of standard formula where you have a question. Well, we need to answer the question. The ethical issue in this case study about, briefly describe it, is, and then whatever it is. And we know, okay, we should be using that same formula for each of them, because APA style, unlike some other types of writing, does not emphasize variety, it emphasizes clarity. And the fastest way to know we're talking about something very similar is if the wording is the same. Word choices are the same. So here I can say, all right, well, I'm going to answer that for each of them. Now, oh, speaking of it, I see it is being referenced. So I know I'm going to have to reference those principles, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be referencing the course textbooks. I'm going to go ahead and add those to my references list. All right, and I've gone ahead and I have added the first entry. Now the references section should be sorted alphabetically. So this next one, shoot, S-kit comes after A. So we're going to go ahead and have that the second entry, and just clean up that spacing. There we go. All right, so we have our two sources that we know we're going to reference here. And as you add them here, make sure that you add citations to go with them. So you'll probably be referring to one here, because that's our source there. And do remember to introduce and use that abbreviation. So as you go through this, you can start adding things, okay, even before you read through the case study. And you can start putting together, okay, you know you're going to be talking about this. And referring back to the earlier one. So you can see that there's going to be a lot of similar writing because you're doing a formulaic, a process write-up of each case study. Now, sometimes people have trouble with the 150 to 200 words. And that's usually if they think that, well, I answered the question with one sentence and there's nothing more to do. But these are kind of leading questions. So, okay, what is the ethical issue? Okay, it's X. All right, so tell us more. What are the implications of this? Is this very common? Is this something that you have observed is, in your own professional experience, is a common and serious problem? Whatever it is, write about it. And you can certainly select whatever text you have after deleting the questions there, and go to Tools, Word Count, and see, okay, how many words do you have for that? So counting the questions, this is only 80-something words, so we got a lot of space to add more stuff there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about finishing that outline process. So some basic principles. First, use the assignment instructions to create a working outline. And then add any specified headings. So the instructions said have case study number 1, study number 2, etc. So we added those. Answer each of the questions from the assignment instructions. And then, an important step, to add logical bridges and other types of phrases that will connect your answers to form not just sentences answering the questions, but a paragraph that flows. For example, in this instance here, without intervention, students will be unable to effectively whatever it is. Therefore, officials should do this thing as recommended by or in alignment with this ACPA CSEI standard, and list a specific one. And so, but by adding these logical bridges, you create not only a more naturalistic paragraph, but an easier way of seeing, okay, does this argument connect? Is it clear why this is the case, or why this should be the case? All right, that's our time for today. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. And I tell students, if you have a question, much rather that you answer it than worry that you're going to be bothering us. The whole Writing Center team gets those emails, and we'll jump on it. Whoever sees it first will send you a reply. So don't worry that you're overburdening anyone. And the only bad question is one that you would like to ask, but don't. Because if it's something you think is important, something that you think will help you do something in your paper better, more clearly, more confidently, ask away. You can also, when you schedule an appointment, you can put any special requests or particular concerns in the appointment notes, and we do look at those before we send you feedback. And for everything else, check out the Online Writing Center website. You can grab a copy of the course paper template you saw me using. You can see sample papers from many programs, explorations of topics, as well as a complete catalog of our webinars. All right, that's it. Have a good night.